Have you ever thought it would be fun to do some industrial switching in a yard? I know I have. That's what this video is about. I'm Burr Stewart, and this is the 31st edition of my model railroad operation videos. Today, we're going to be cleaning up from the SoundRails operating sessions which were featured in my last three videos, numbers 27, 20, and 29. I was cleaning up from all of that excitement and realized that there were some industrial sidings that didn't get switched that needed to be switched. So we pulled out this lovely SW-1200 VN switcher, which is a recent Rapido model with an absolutely astonishing rotating beacon, which is made out of 4 LEDs. And we headed out to track 0, which is a track in the Interbay yard that was added later, and after they had done track number 1 through whatever. So they couldn't figure out what to do, so they called it track 0, and I copied that since I copy the prototype every chance I get. And we used track 0 for local cars that need to be switched. And you can see on the right-hand side here, there's some tank cars sitting on track 0 that 3 of them need to go to an industrial area just behind the bridge there, and 5 of them need to go over to the Time Oil facility that's over near Emerson Street. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to pick up that cut of tank cars and deliver them to their 2 places. And I'm just amazed at how much fun it is, and you'll be amazed at how long it takes to get the job done, considering we're just serving 2 industries with 2 cuts of cars. Oops, I knocked over that car. That's the hazard of putting scenic details in front of your switch machines. It throws you off, so then you smash into the tank car. Hopefully it won't explode on you. There you can see our nice long cut of tank cars. I'm pretty fond of almost any locomotive or cut of cars, but I really like the look of a string of tank cars. How about you? There's just something about it. It looks very industrial, and I don't know. The challenge for this operation, of course, is that this is true in the prototype too, that when you move south of the yard, you end up with a bunch of grade crossings at Broad Street and Wall Street. There's about 4 streets that the main line crosses here, and the switchers sometimes have to get out and blow their horns. And one of these days I'll build some grade crossing flashers, which, as I've said before, will make this kind of an operation even more annoying. As it is, I'm leaving the bell on in the switcher, and that's annoying enough, if you ask me. Along the backdrop there, you can see my version of the Space Needle in downtown Seattle. Just a photograph hanging on the wall. One of these days we'll paint that on the backdrop so everyone's clear this is indeed Seattle. Not that the Space Needle is anywhere near that close to the track. Now the next thing we need to do is cross over to the other side of the yard from the main classification area. And so we're now pushing through a crossover from main 1 to main 2. And of course, through the Interbay yard, there's only 1 main track. It goes down from 2 main tracks to 1. It's a single track through the yard. And we'll be on that main briefly. You can see I haven't finished the backdrop. I've painted a couple of boxes to represent condo buildings. One of the advantages of operating a local industrial switching job like this when the layout is quiet is you don't have to sit around waiting for the mainline trains to get out of your way. If we had filmed this during SoundRails, it would have taken 4 times longer just to get this simple switching job done. On the other hand, I suppose some of the yard masters among you would say that there are times when the yard is caught up, and during those times it's nice to have a little industrial switching work to do. So if you want, you can imagine that the layout is buzzing with trains, it's just none of them are in the Interbay yard right now, so we're getting to do this. I was able to put my Akaso action cam around the layout during this maneuver, so that's why we have 2 different shots, or 2 different angles most of the time. If it's annoying, I guess you could go through and watch the video twice to get the different scenes without being so distracted. Anyway, I think it's kind of cool. So here we are, pushing our cut of 5 cars up to the Time Oil facility near the Emerson Street overpass on the east side of the Burlington Northern's Interbay yard, which they renamed the Balmer yard, so that's another thing that confuses people. And now I'm uncoupling that set of cars, and we'll pull the others back and take them over to the chemical processing plants that are along the backdrop there. This involves a switchback maneuver, and it's so far from the aisle that I've installed a couple of those Blue Point turnout control machines so that I can flip the switches remotely from the aisle rather than having to reach over with my hand. You'll see this in a minute. You know, one of the interesting things about railroad operations in general, and model railroad operations in particular, is that 2 different people will do the same switching job completely different ways. For example, in this case, I chose to shove the entire cut of cars over to Time Oil and then pull the remaining 3 back to spot into the second shipper. Well, we could have stopped where we were, uncoupled the 3 cars, shoved them into the shipper, and then went over to Time Oil. So it's just a question of which way you like better, or what occurs to you first, or something. But often there's no one right or best way to do it. Now, we've brought the train to a stop. Keep an eye on the turnout points there, and you'll see them flick across. There. Now we can pull out onto the switchback. That Greyhound bus you see on the bridge in the inset there was a real classic back in the 60s and 70s. All right, now we'll watch for that next switch to flip. Now we can push our 3 cars back to their industries. I call it Chempro on the waybill, but actually there were several different companies that processed used chemicals and things, and it was very handy to the main yard there in Interbay. I had a little trouble both uncoupling the cars and controlling the locomotive, so you can see there I'm kind of fighting with it because I didn't have it stopped all the way. That caused me to shove one of the cars off the end bumper. Oh well. Like I always say, this is reality model railroading. That yard looks a little plugged up for my taste. I don't know. I'll have to go look and see if there are other things we can send off for local switching jobs like this. That yellow sticky on the backdrop off to the right side is the location of Kubota Steel, which we're in the middle of scratch building a little flat that will represent it there. Our set-out's being performed. All we have to do now is take the engine back to the engine terminal, which would seem easy, but it's going to take us a while. We got to go through the crossover here and then go back across the yard the way we came and then go all the way back. And when we get done with that, I'll show you putting away the car cards in the right boxes so that we keep up to date with what we've delivered and what we haven't. Watch for that magic switch to throw again. Nice. So much better than watching my hand reach all the way over there, knocking cars off the track on the way. I don't know about you, but I could watch that rotating beacon all day. The engineer on this switcher probably would have turned the bell off by now because he would have been going out of his mind. There's a lot of debate about exactly when you're supposed to use the bell and when you're not, but when you're working in a busy yard, it seems like a good idea. But if it drives you crazy, it doesn't seem like a good idea. So there must be some trade-offs there. Sorry about the jerky tripod action. I'm usually trying to get the subject in focus by touching on my cell phone screen, and that tends to create a little jerk. There, now I lined the turnouts for the correct track to come back onto the yard area. The auto-loading pavement there to the right of the switch engine is something we just built recently. And the only reason there aren't auto cars there is because I was trying to improve the view for the camera, so I removed them temporarily. Now we're going past the scale track that we use for weighing cars when needed. Nice close-up view of that rotating beacon that has 4 LEDs inside. Well, railroading doesn't get better than that. You might have noticed those blue LED lights that are protecting the men at work in the car repair shed. And you also can see I just grabbed the little mini tripod and moved it over for a different view of the locomotive as we shut it down. Well, that was fun. All we really have now is to shut her down and put away the car cards in the correct car card boxes. It sounds so real, doesn't it? Okay, well these were all the cars that we had on track 0 to spot. 5 on the left went to Time Oil, and the 3 on the right went to Chempro. So over there on the right is the Chempro box. We just stick those 3 car cards in there, and then we run over to the other side of the yard where we have a box for the Time Oil facility, which I think I have labeled Fuel Rack. And there they are, and there are the car cards that go with them. So before the next operating session, we'll flip those waybills to the next destination, and somebody will have to pull the cars out of there and put them in the correct train to be on their way. So our work is done for today. I hope you've enjoyed following along with me while we did a little industrial switching in the Interbay yard. And I think we just have to watch one more time while this locomotive shuts down. It's just too cool.